Member for Choiseul, Saltibus.
I was waiting for the Deputy Speaker to make that request on my behalf. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. It's always a pleasure to be in the Parliament for budget, because it reminds you of how time flies, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and to always give reason to give thanks and praise to be around for another year. Mr. Speaker, I want to first thank my constituents of Choiseul Saltibus for the confidence they have reposed in me to represent on their behalf, Mr. Speaker, and to ensure them that I will continue to engage the government on their behalf, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this morning when I woke up, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as usual, I give thanks and praise, and then I have my coffee, and while having my coffee, I usually browse through messages that come to my phone, Mrs. Deputy Speaker. And this morning, I got a particularly refreshing jingle. And I must say, it did sort of raise my spirits and put me in a very positive light for the day ahead, Mr. Speaker. And it was something that a Calypsonian, my bachelor, he has a jingle which I think just recently came out, called, and he was going, Bonjour, ça qu'a fait, est-ce ou bien, moi qu'a souhaité un bon journée. I would sing it for you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but, and Mr. Speaker, the positive vibes I received from that, I thought, maybe I should ask the member for Dennery North, that maybe this is something that we should encourage our young students, to sort of a competition, to create some sort of positive, jingle, so that can be used to give that sort of positive vibe with our students, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, so that they can, look forward to the next one, and they can sing it along and create that sort of synergies among students and among schools, Mr. Speaker. See, who can do the other. I think it's a good way to enhance our creativity, in terms of our young ones. But as we come here today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and as I reflect on the estimates of revenue and expenditure for 23-24, the sum of $1,856,719,000, and what has led us to this point, I am reminded of a metaphor. And it's a pity my friend from Library is not there, because normally, he's the one who normally gives budgets various names. But I am reminded of a metaphor that was used in Parliament many years ago. And the expression at the time, Mr. Deputy Speaker, was milking the bull. I don't know if you can remember that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but that was an expression used by former member for Beaufort North, Mr. Honorable Cecil at the time, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I thought that expression, Mr. Speaker, was very apt to what has brought this budget to us and what is currently happening, Mr. Speaker. And I will explain a little as I go further into my presentation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am of the view that this government won the majority vote based on the fact that the populace felt that the mantra of putting people first would be down to a greater social conscience and target especially the many vulnerable sectors in our society. And Mr. Speaker, I use that premise because I want your indulgence as I provide an element of historic comparison to our current performance and the budget before us. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in the Prime Minister's statement yesterday, which I'm yet to receive, and I heard the Prime Minister indicate that there's no obligation to provide that, but I believe that he errs in that because this is something that we have received in the past.
Hold on, member for...
Mr. Speaker, on the point of order, the only thing that I recall that opposition member...
Hold on, he's on a point of order. Can you take your seat?
Sure.
Only thing
What point of order?
I recall...
What point of order?
We sit in the House. That opposition members got was the estimates of expenditure. And it used to come on Saturdays, on the weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
And we used to have to come to debate it on the Tuesday. In this case, they got the estimates of expenditure from Wednesday or Thursday. I cannot recall, and I've been in this parliament much longer than member for Choiseul, ever getting, after a record of the estimates, after a discussion estimates, any speech from the Minister of Finance. And if I'm wrong, I believe. I like the minister, the member for Choiseul, to tell me on what occasion did, when the Prime Minister delivered, the Minister delivered that he got a copy of the estimates. I like, if that is, I
Only for policy.
only it happens in the budget, and I can tell you on the 25th of April, when we do the budget, he's going to get a copy of the budget statement after. That has never, it didn't happen last year. It's never happened. It's never happened. But if he wants to believe himself and say that, I have no problems.
Mr. Speaker,
Member for Choiseul,
Yeah.
member for Castries has said that you're misleading the House in that no statement has been issued, and it is the convention of this House to give the appropriation speech. When the Prime Minister makes the appropriation bill, they circulate the speech. But I don't know the front speech, my apologies, but I don't know it to be customary to pass on. So can you not, if you cannot prove this, can you refrain from the statement?
Mr. Deputy.
Hold on. Member for Choiseul, members. Member for Mico South. Can you? I understand that you're there with the other member, but can you please understand that I am in the chair? I'm speaking to the member for Choiseul, and you all afford him to speak in silence. If I'm asking a question, I expect, and the same thing for the members on the other side. And the member is going to. So, member for Choiseul, we're going to carry the business of this House. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. However, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as rightfully indicated by the member for Castries, the Prime Minister, he has been in this House way longer than me, and obviously his retention as it relates to previous House sittings. But I can recall, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that when we were in office, as soon as the Prime Minister would have finished his statement, even when we were walking out, we would have gotten copies, would have been circulated to everybody. Not this. Not
Member, which statement?
It is statement made by the Prime Minister. Okay, we'll move forward. Okay, we'll move forward. Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we'll move forward. We'll move forward.
Let's carry on, member for Choiseul.
Let's move forward. Mr. As I was indicating, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Total nonsense. Look at it. Black and white. Every single
Member for Castries is. Member for Castries is. Member for Mico South. Member for Castries is. member for Castries East, and member for Miku South. Can we please allow the member for Choiseul to proceed? Member.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am aware that the Honorable Prime Minister and my good friend, they couldn't wait for me to speak because they needed that sort of,
Carry on, member for Choiseul.
in the House. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister in his statement yesterday gleefully indicated that on coming into office, his government had to deal with outstanding payables in excess of $200 million. We heard that from the Prime Minister yesterday, that on coming into office, his government had to deal with outstanding payables in excess of $200 million. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is amazing how the government selectively uses the challenges of COVID when it suits their agenda. And I say that, Mr. Speaker, and we have replete examples in this Parliament where, the members have used COVID when it suits the agenda. And I just want to use two of them, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Prime Minister spoke to how destructive COVID was. He indicated that COVID made a lot of people poorer, and in some cases, he made some people destitute. That is deep to recognize that's what COVID did, Mr. Speaker. I also want to quote the member for Soufrière, and I was happy she actually made mention of it in her statement earlier today, when she made a statement in July last year, and she said, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as a country, we have lived through a dramatic period of setback since March 2020, when we started to feel the effects of the pandemic. During this time, Mr. Speaker, we were hit harder than any other region in the world, both in terms of per capita death and economic contraction, given our openness as a small island developing state. That is a document of the House that the member for Soufrière. And I use just these two examples, Mr. Speaker, to make my point in that the government has continuously indicated that the last administration performed so bad and left a mess when they came in office, Mr. Speaker. But they refuse, Mr. Speaker, to acknowledge the impact COVID had on the economy of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I refer to the peak of COVID. I refer to the peak of COVID. And I refer to year 2020, year 2021, Mr. Speaker. Year over year, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we had a shortfall in revenue. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the back and forth is nice, but can I be heard?
Members, can you allow the member for Choiseul to be heard in silence, please?
Mr. Speaker, as I indicated, the peak of COVID, year 2020, 2021, year over year, we experienced a shortfall in revenue of over $240 million, Mr. Speaker. That's in revenue, Mr. Speaker. Year over year. Mr. Speaker, in that same period, Mr. Speaker, we had to honor payment of bonds of almost 200 million, Mr. Speaker. 200 million, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, you know very well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, honoring our commitments for bonds and treasury bills is significant because the reputational risk to our country if we're not able to honor these, Mr. Speaker. In addition to that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as a very direct result of COVID, increases in expenditure year over year was over 60 million. When you add all of that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we're talking about a $500 million in shortfall year over year. Yet still, we talk about 500 million, yet still, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member for Castries East, Minister of Finance, Prime Minister, speaks to forfeiting $40 million in terms of fuel revenue, Mr. Speaker. There is no comparison in terms of what we had to deal with under COVID and what the Prime Minister has to deal with in terms of forfeiting revenue of $40 million. After what this country went through, Mr. Speaker, in COVID, after what this country went through in COVID, the only place we could have gone was up. The only place we could have gone up was up, barring significant natural disasters or World War III, Mr. Speaker. Okay? That is a fact. That is a fact. There is no way we could have gone any lower than where we were. And yet, it is really sad, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the government would have on what they got there and not acknowledging the factors that brought us there. It is a sad day, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm very happy to have heard the Prime Minister indicate that, the government has performed even better than anticipated. And I heard my good friend, now in the chair, who sits right immediately to my left, this morning when he was using cricket as an analogy, and he said that when the rains came, instead of putting the covers to cover the pitch and go take shelter, we were dancing on the pitch. But really and truly, what we were doing on the pitch, Mr. Deputy Speaker, was planting seeds, the seeds that are being enjoyed now. That's what is happening, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Because we heard the member from Beaufort North. We heard the member for Beaufort North. We heard the member for Beaufort North indicate for the first time in so many years, enjoying a surplus of 29.5. Obviously that's wonderful, but it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight. There was something that set that in motion. And as a matter of fact, to come to this house and indicate to the people of St. Lucia that this economy is doing so well, that you now have a surplus, and yet still so many of the vulnerable people that you profess to protect are still paying significant high prices for fuel, Mr. Speaker. To the point, and Mr. Speaker, paying high prices for fuel is one thing, but the effect of the electricity on the vulnerable people, Mr. Speaker, is significant. Of course, the fuel prices affect because the government sets the stage for the surcharge that Lucy explained. But anyway,
the surcharge on electricity.
Mr. Speaker,
the surcharge.
Mr. Speaker, I dare say that this government would have performed even better had they not stopped so many of the projects. I dare say. Mr. Speaker, I wish to make some observations and ask some questions under some various heads as it relates to the budget before us. I would confess, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that while the Prime Minister indicated we got the estimates 3 days, 4 days, it is quite significant to go through within that period, Mr. Speaker, and so the bulk of my contribution would be made when we have the policy debate. But today, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make some observations and ask some questions, and hopefully some answers could be given by the Prime Minister in his rebuttal or the speakers who who will be coming forward. Mr. Speaker, I wish to go to head 35, Department of Justice. Mr. Speaker, I want to say categorically that while I was absent for the debate on the CCJ, I am on record when we had the discussion in this parliament with some of the judges from the CCJ and some of the staff on indicating that I support the CCJ, but I had concerns with regards to our local system and how, we need to really focus on addressing some of our local court systems, before going to that, to the next level, Mr. Speaker. And I raised that, Mr. Speaker, because as I browse through the Department of Justice budget, and I indicated head 45, Mr. Speaker, and again, I said it's an observation, and maybe I can be guided further down the line unless the allocation is somewhere else. But I don't see anything to give any reassurance with regards to what we're currently facing with our courts currently, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have, for example, in Dennery, Mr. Speaker, over here, the magistrate court has not been performing. And we have that similar scenario ranging from Dennery all the way to Soufrière, where the courts have been closed down for one reason or the other. And we all know the saying, Mr. Deputy Speaker, justice denied. Justice delayed is justice denied. Mr. Deputy Speaker, my concern is that I don't see anything under this department to provide me with any comfort that there is going to be some sort of emphasis on rectifying that situation. We've been speaking about the halls of justice. So I welcome any word to show that I may be misled based on what I'm seeing, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am, however, very pleased that under the key programs we see the full digitization of vital records, Mr. Speaker, and I am pleased to have been associated based on being part of the last administration when we started that under the DigiGov program, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, my colleague, I move to head 46, Mr. Deputy Speaker, head 46, which is a favorite to my colleague on the left, head 46. And I'm very pleased, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to see the increase in allocation. Obviously, it is required based on what is happening in our country today. But I do have two concerns. And we will speak a little bit more on that in the policy, Mr. But I do have two concerns. One is that with the emphasis that we're speaking on in terms of curbing crime, I'm somehow disappointed that we're only looking to increase personnel by 15. I thought we would have seen, a maximum increase in personnel because the number of people in the police force currently, I believe, is significantly below what is required to police the entire island and to deal with some of the growing issues from a country that is growing. So that is one of the concerns that I have here. I also note with some concern, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that under key program strategies, one of the areas speaks to provide professional service to clients by processing traveling documents, controlling migration flows, and enforcing immigration for the review period. And when we look to the achievements and the progress of this strategy, there is blank. So it says to me that there's nothing that has been done to address that particular issue. I go further to look at the number of passports received and processed. And for 2022-2023, we saw a figure of 5,165 passports processed, and under 23-24, we see a similar figure of 5,165, which says to me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the issue we're currently facing with people coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning to stand on a line, Mr. Speaker, will be going on for a very long time. We will not see any increase in efficiency in terms of addressing that problem where, many of our senior citizens travel from the south and have to deal with that. So it's a concern to me. If there is something that can give me a reassurance down the line, I would gladly accept that. I'm also concerned, Mr. Speaker, with regards to the intention by the department to increase fourfold the seizure of weapons and firearms, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I applaud the police officers for giving themselves that reach. But I don't see, again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the reintroduction of the K9 units or the additional scanners to provide that sort of assistance. My colleague on my left asked, and I will answer, what's the fascination with the K9 units? And I will answer, because it has been proven that the K9 unit does not recognize friends or relations. The K9 unit sniffs you out, and if you have an illegal firearm, it will bring that to the attention of whoever is in charge of that unit. So it's very important that we take out the human factor where there may be some sort of prejudice, okay? And let the K9 unit, as I said, who does not recognize colleagues or friends to stop that stem, which we recognize is yeah. So
you can't rent it at a rate. What kind of rates you rented it before?
well,
There's a value to life now.
so I move, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to head 41, agriculture. Mr. Speaker, I will say, and I have indicated that to the member for Dennery South, I did not know the member prior to 2021 elections. And the first time I met him was at a function at Choiseul Fisheries. And we had a chat, and I told him, my spirit goes with him. Okay? And I said, I say that, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I say that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because
Our spirit goes with yours,
I say that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because
You must ask yourself what you did wrong, because look who you got instead. The one that doesn't go with your spirit.
I say that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because I recognize.
That's why you don't make it peace with yourself.
And you all got Richard. Congratulations. Congratulations.
I say that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because the member for Dennery South, has been speaking quite a bit about trying to revitalize the banana market, trying to revitalize the banana growers, and also.
You lost your hand. Imagine the member from Equal South is disturbing you. Ask the speaker to stop him.
I'm protecting him.
I'll tell my friend on the other side to cool out. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I said, I'm a bit concerned because I've heard the members speak quite a bit about, trying to get the banana market, in a better place, Mr. Speaker. But when I look in the estimates, Mr. Speaker, bananas were mentioned, I think, twice. And when I look at it, Mr. Speaker, the monies allocated to the banana management unit is really and truly speaks to paying of salaries. I don't see, for example, under the banana productivity improvement, there's zero. So I don't see the emphasis with regards to assisting the banana farmers in terms of production, in terms of shipping logistics. But I heard the members speak to an interested party who in the region, and I think you said it was from Trinidad. But I do have a concern because from my previous experience in the Ministry of Commerce trying to assist a manufacturer, the challenges we had from Trinidad, the foreign currency. And, it is something we need to be very careful of, that our farmers do not send bananas to Trinidad in the hope of getting the money in a timely fashion. We might have some issues. I know the US dollar, because of, I know there is, at one time we had to seek the assistance of the ECCB to assist Winera, and I don't know if it is something you explore, but it could pose a problem and could bring our banana farmers into serious hardships if that matter is not addressed. We know the challenges we have with the UK market, and based on listening to previous people speak in the agricultural field, I have listened to quite a few big farmers, and there seemed to be a thought that the focus for the UK market should really be on specific farmers and not open to everybody. You identify 4 or 5 main farmers and you get them to produce, to ship to the UK, and then based on that success we can bring in additional, but the challenges we have with the UK market, we cannot destroy our reputation with some of the bad habits that some of the farmers think. I also spoke, I also heard the member speak, and the member for Beaufort South was not there. Had he been there, maybe he would have prompted the member accordingly. But the member for agriculture, the member for Dennery South, he indicated that for the very first time, the marketing board would be getting a subvention from government. Now, while that may be true, that way it may, and I'm happy that you're there because I know you know better. The marketing board has had to be rescued by successive governments time and time again. And we're not talking about the $250,000 that you spoke about, but significant sums. Likewise, the fish marketing board. And so the statement, is not quite accurate. Okay. I would not, my friend from Beaufort North, I will not go into an argument with bananas. Because, okay. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am really,
show me where.
I would like to advise my friends on the other side that I am the one on the podium.
Members, the chair allows you all to go through the back and forth, but please allow the member for Choiseul to continue with his contribution. Go ahead, member.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was a bit saddened when my friend, I said, from Dennery South, sort of gave a en passant notification of the $5.7 million to the Choiseul fish port. That kind of allocation, we should have gotten a round of applause around the table, but you did it so hurriedly You did it so hurriedly. But so, Mr. Speaker, I move briefly, and my friend, I move to head 46, and I would like you to come back into the room. He walks out. Head 46, which speaks to tourism, and I'm hoping, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you allow me to raise it with him when he comes back. But I note with some concern that in last year's budget, there was an amount that was negotiated under the OECS Tourism Community Project for $200,000 US, equaling $540,000. And that was directed at rehabilitating the Choiseul Arts and Crafts Center. Member for Castries South, I'm happy, and I will repeat for your, yes. I'm very concerned, member for Castries South, that an amount of almost $540,000 that was in last year's budget, which was allocated to the Choiseul Handicraft Center, which was something that was negotiated as a grant actually, which was supposed to have been for the rehabilitation of the Choiseul Handicraft Center, and also it had a training component with it. I did not see it in this year's budget, and I don't know whether it has been repurposed, and it concerns me that, for the focus that we have been speaking as it relates to, our creative industries, and I don't know if it's, member feels that the 5.7 that I got from the Japanese is sufficient and I should not get anything else. But I'm very concerned that it is not there, because we were looking forward particularly to the training component, and the crafters were looking forward to it. So it concerns me. Now, very good. The member, I would also want to, and I to speak to some heritage sites that were acquired under the last administration's tenure. And the intention was that we would have created some green spaces. And I have not seen anything, to suggest that any attention would be given to these spaces. I'm hoping, member for through you, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, I will tell you, the Deputy Speaker is doing a very good job. Through you, Mr. Speaker, I'm directed at the member for Castries South, because I know he would be in close conversation with the developers for the St. Lucia project, that that particular heritage site, that we should be very careful that there's no encroachment, and they're not provided the latitude to encroach on the intentions for the Choiseul people's patrimony. I note Carnival is back. I know there's been an increase in Carnival. And it is kind of disappointing, because I could tell the member for Castries South that Choiseul Saltibus was actually the first community, and some may want to argue that, Soufrière may want to argue that, but Choiseul Saltibus was the first community to actually have community carnival. Very first. We had a Queen show, I'll never forget that. And it's kind of disappointing that we were not engaged in terms of, having, well, I should say maybe I am not aware whether the council was engaged, because that sort of correspondence flies over my head. I don't get any sort of notification. So, but if they were not, it's kind of disappointing, because, we were always, looking forward to that sort of activity. I wish to move to Head 48. Member for Castries Central is here, and I'm hoping, maybe he could also provide some clarification where needs be. But I speak, Mr. Speaker, to under the housing program. I notice that there seem to have been a reduction in terms of what was allocated last year and to what was in the budget, an reduction of almost half. And and that's why you were not in, and I said I'm making observations and asking questions, so when you get to present, you will, okay. So, because it concerns me that based on what I recognize as a reduction in the housing program, and we've heard from members across the room how important it is that housing assistance to the vulnerable in our various communities. Albeit I had some challenges in getting the assistance that was originally agreed upon, but I'm looking forward to yeah. But I also note, Mr. Speaker, through you to the member of Kasri Central, that the number of households whose standard of living was improved through the housing assistance program, building material grants and labor, and again, that is because of the fact that there seem to be some additional information required. 2022-2023, it's indicated that 200 people got assistance, and in the new year it will be increased to 1,000. But so as I said, it concerns me that we can increase the numbers but with a reduced budget. But as you indicated, you will advise me as to the true situation there. The member for Beaufort North is absent. I wish he was there, because again, in asking questions and seeking clarification, there seemed to be a sort of a gap that is very, very unclear to me, particularly when I look at item line 1101, which speaks to salaries, OKEU. And I notice a significant reduction in salaries from 34,541,770 2022-2023 to an amount of 20,702,762. Member for Beaufort North, I was just seeking your indulgence here in terms of maybe the Prime Minister in his rebuttal. And I don't know if there is something that I'm missing. I don't know if full disclosure has not yet been made. I remember some parliaments ago we came in here to guarantee loans for OKEU. And I am not sure if that is part of this whole scenario as to whether there's going to be some shift from the hospital as we know it, whether there's going to be it's going to be privatized. But there's something there that's not clear at all, and I am seeking some sort of clarity, because that's a significant difference in salaries. And I think if there is that sort of move that's been made, we should get that sort of full disclosure. Well, let's not forget where Millennium Heights started. Let's not forget, my good friend. Okay, so yeah, but come full disclosure. Anyway, so I also want Mr. Speaker to ask the member for Beaufort North, and I think we share the same sentiments when it comes to that with regards to senior citizens' home. The senior citizens' home, as I understand it, may have about 25 wards. I do understand at St. Jude's, we have quite a few people who really and truly should be in a senior citizens home, but they seem to have taken up permanent residence at St. Jude's. And, I don't see anything in the budget here to recognize any sort of increased capacity at the senior citizens home. Well, I'm looking for your clarification at a later date, yeah. 12 p.m. Okay. Well, the member for Beaufort North is, because Beaufort South is indicating to me that there is an allocation, because I believe around the island we are seeing the need for quite a few people who require that sort of care and attention. And Thank you for that. You're looking out for me. Yes. Okay. Mr. Speaker, it is very glaring because I remember members of the government side, having a field day when we were in office as it relates to the amount of money allocated to consultancies, Mr. Speaker. And I noticed the $122 million for consultancy, Mr. Speaker, very glaring in this year's estimate. So the 122 million. So there is a sort of a, I'll come to CDP in a while. I'll come to it because we have to give Jack his jacket. Mr. Speaker, I will be concluding very soon. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I speak to, and I heard, I can't quite remember whether it was the Prime Minister or another member who made note that for the first time they will be assisting the Cerebral Palsy Association and farmers. I'm very happy to hear that, Mr. Speaker. But I note that there is a matter that I wish to be addressed. The member for Beaufort for Castries North, as the Minister for Physical Planning. There is an issue. The farmers with disabilities, when we were in office, Mr. Speaker, they came to me and we allocated about 5 acres to them so that they could have done their farming. Because while they have disability and many of them cannot do the work, farmers with disability. Yeah, I appreciate that I said. I'm talking about the land that we allocated for them. I spoke to them very recently and they indicated to me that lease has not been finalized, and as a result of that, some funding agencies that
Member for Choiseul, you have 10 minutes left.
Yeah, I'll be running up. So, member for Castries North, if you could follow up on that lease for the farmers, it would be appreciated. Sorry? Farmers with disability? No. The member for Castries Southeast, and I must say I was happy to see him in the Parliament this morning. He spoke about the bus in his constituency, and so he was encouraging, larger constituencies. And I should tell him that actually we have a bus in Choiseul, Saltibus. We do have a bus which is actually dedicated to senior citizens, but it is a bus that must be 100 years old, a 14-seater, as old as the senior citizens that they carry, yes. And that was donated many years ago, and I must commend the administrator, and I will mention the name Mary Pierre. And Mr. Speaker, we've made light, or in fact the government have made light of the fundraising that we had when we were having our balls, Mr. Speaker. But we must not underestimate the impact, the funds that were raised, in some of these things. Because at one point I remember we raised over $400,000, and that association got $25,000 to assist with the program because they were not getting the kind of support. So, Mr. Speaker, we play our politics, but I think sometimes there's an element that we have to look at the human element and stay away from that. I also wish to speak to the member for Mr. Speaker through you with regards to road rehabilitation, and I spoke to the member with regards to a concern, and it's not just Choiseul, but I recognize it happens in other areas in St. Lucia, where cement trucks drop cement on our roads and they're not penalized. They do that with impunity. And in fact, in Rivadore currently, we have a situation where on the left side of the road, when you're going up, significant portion of the road has concrete. Vehicles coming up move to the other side of the road, and that's an accident waiting to happen. So I am hoping that the minister can attend to that as soon as possible to deal with that. The member for Choiseul spoke to the playing fields, Mr. Speaker, and I wish he was here to hear the concern that I have to one of our main playing fields in Lafargue, where we had Journée Creole hosted last year, and albeit that as the parliamentary rep, I was not consulted or had no engagement with it only towards the end, Mr. Speaker. The field had quite a bit of damage from that activity, Mr. Speaker, and the people who use the field are complaining, and I'm hoping that we can see some sort of allocation to re-level that field so that we don't get injuries on. Mr. Speaker, I have quite a bit to say on the youth economy, but I'll leave that for the next debate when we discuss policy, Mr. Speaker. I must say, Mr. Speaker, that the community of Choiseul, Saltibus, seem to be one of the communities that's most sought after right now, where a lot of people want to come to live, retire, relax. The member for Beaufort South is quite happy, in the community, despite the fact that,
You are stranger.
Yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to remind the Prime Minister that, I'm the parliamentary rep, and your family is from there, Mr. Prime Minister. Yes, in fact, most of St. Lucians have roots in Choiseul. But I must, and I've always been that kind of individual. I don't play politics thing. I must thank the Prime Minister for the allocation that he provided to me under CDP, despite the fact that he has said that there are members in his cabinet who would not like to see that happen. But Mr. Speaker, and you, member, through you, Mr. Speaker, the member for Dennery North, has said that maybe we're experiencing a new day. And if we're experiencing a new day, let's because remember when you all were in opposition, this is one of the things you all fought for. Even today, in the presentation of Beaufort North, he spoke about that egregious behavior and in terms of targeting the. But let us, my concern, Mr. Speaker, is that there are too many things. We'll deal with Pauline next time around. Don't worry. Mr. Speaker, my concern, honestly, and I think we have to do things differently. We have to do differently. Is that we have to do things differently. We cannot, as a government, spend money, and when a government changes, assets are left to deteriorate. Who pays for that? Who pays for that, Mr. Speaker? Okay, so we need these things, Mr. Speaker, to be addressed. Let's stop being myopic in our view from a political lens, Mr. Speaker. Okay, let's try to unite our country. It's very important, Mr. Speaker. But I'm very concerned with regards to the lack of order. And I know in the policy debate I will speak more as to how I wish our community would have been treated, Mr. Speaker. But that being said, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to the next debate in April to discuss the policy. Thank you.